The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Lights floated in the air like tiny stars. Hundreds of alien species sat in curved seats that rose high toward the ceiling. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no bodies at all and existed only as clouds of purple gas. They had gathered today for one reason: to discuss the species to join their ranks. Humans. Ambassador of the species stood at the central platform. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms that moved constantly when he spoke. His people had traveled the stars for 10,000 years. They had seen many species come and go. Most were weak, most were afraid, and from what had learned about humans, they were no different. "Friends of the Council," began, his voice echoing through the hall, "we must address the matter of Earth's representatives. They have asked to join our military alliance. They wish to stand beside us against the threats of the outer darkness." A low rumble of conversation spread through the crowd. Some aliens laughed, others shook their heads, a few simply stared with their many eyes. Raised one of his hands. "I understand your concern, I share it. Humans are fragile, their bodies break easily. They live for less than 100 years. And most importantly, they fear death more than any species we have encountered." In the human section of the hall, Dr. Park sat quietly. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple dark suit, nothing fancy. Beside her sat her assistant, a young man named. He was tall and nervous, constantly checking his tablet for updates. "Did he just call us cowards?" whispered. Smiled softly. "He called us afraid. There is a difference." "Is there? We will see." On the platform continued his speech. He pulled up images on a floating screen. They showed human hospitals, human funerals, human graves. They showed people crying at the loss of loved ones. "Look at this," said. "Humans build entire industries around avoiding death. They spend fortunes on medicine. They freeze their bodies after death, hoping to live again. They write laws to protect each other from the smallest dangers. They put warnings on everything. Do not drink this. Do not touch that. May cause harm." More laughter from the crowd. A species called the Kell, who looked like walking trees, found this especially funny. Their leader, Elder, slapped his wooden hands together with amusement. "They fear hot coffee," said loudly. "They put warnings on cups of hot coffee." The laughter grew louder. Remained calm, gripped his tablet so hard his knuckles turned white. "How can we trust such a species to fight beside us?" asked. "When the enemy comes, will they stand firm, or will they run? Will they hide behind their warnings and their medicines and their fear?" He turned to face the human delegation directly. His 4 eyes focused on with something close to pity. "I mean no disrespect, Ambassador Park. Your people have achieved much in a short time. You have reached the stars. You have built great cities, but war is not for the fearful. Perhaps your species would be better suited for other tasks. Trade, perhaps, or art, something safe." Stood slowly. The hall fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every floating consciousness turned to watch her. She was so small compared to, so fragile-looking, wanted to pull her back, to protect her from the judgment of 1,000 alien species, but walked forward with steady steps. She climbed the platform and stood beside as if she belonged there. "Ambassador," she said, her voice clear and strong, "may I respond?" Looked surprised. Most species did not challenge him directly, but he was curious. He wanted to see what excuse she would offer. "Of course," he said. "Please explain yourself." Nodded. She turned to face the crowd, her hands clasped behind her back. "You are correct about many things," she began. "Humans do fear death. We build hospitals to fight it. We create medicines to delay it. We mourn deeply when it takes those we love. This is true." Smiled. He had expected an argument, not an agreement. But continued, "You have made a mistake, a very common mistake. You have confused fear with respect." The hall grew even quieter. Some of the aliens leaned forward in their seats. Humans respect death, said. We know its power. We understand that it waits for all of us. And because we respect it, we prepare for it. We study it. We try to understand it. She paused and looked directly at. But respect is not the same as surrender. Humans do not surrender to death. We fight it. Every single day we fight it. And sometimes, Ambassador, we do something that your species might find very strange. What is that? Asked. Smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something dangerous in it. Something that made feel, for the first time, a little uncertain. Sometimes, said, we challenge death directly, not because we must, not because we have no choice, but because we want to, because something inside us, something we cannot explain, makes us look at the most dangerous thing we can find and say, I wonder if I can survive that. Blinked his 4 eyes. That makes no sense. Why would any creature do such a thing? That is exactly what I wish to show you, turned to and nodded. If the council will allow it, I would like to call a witness, a historian from Earth who has studied human behavior for 30 years. He will explain what I cannot. Elder raised a wooden hand. What can a historian tell us that you cannot? Smile grew wider. He can tell you about something we call hold my beer incidents. Silence. Then confusion. Hold my beer, repeated slowly. What is beer? What does holding it have to do with anything? Give us 1 hour, said. 1 hour and you will understand everything. Looked at the council. They were curious now. Even the skeptics wanted to know what this strange human phrase meant. Very well, said. 1 hour. But I warn you, Ambassador Park, if this is a waste of our time. It won't be, said. She walked back to her seat, calm as ever. Was already sending messages on his tablet. His hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. He was excited. Are you sure about this? He whispered too. She sat down and crossed her legs. In about 1 hour, every species in this hall is going to realize they have completely misunderstood humanity. And when they do, they will never look at us the same way again. Smiled despite himself. That sounds dangerous. Laughed softly. It will be for them. And so, in the greatest hall in the known universe, surrounded by species who had conquered stars and destroyed empires, humanity prepared to teach the galaxy its most important lesson. Death was not their master. It was their favorite opponent. The 1 hour wait began immediately. Remained in her seat, completely calm. Worked frantically on his tablet, sending messages across the galaxy to Earth. The other alien species used the time to discuss among themselves what they had just witnessed. Ambassador returned to his seat among the delegation. His advisors surrounded him at once. What is she planning? Asked one of them, a young named Bora with lighter gray skin than. I do not know, admitted, but I am not worried. What can one historian possibly say that will change anything? We have studied humans for decades. We know what they are. Do we? Bora asked quietly. Ignored the question. He watched the human delegation with his 4 eyes, trying to understand what trick they might be preparing. Ambassador Park sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, almost as if she was sleeping. The young assistant typed endlessly on his device, sweat visible on his forehead despite the cool air. Across the hall, Elder of the Kell leaned toward his own advisors. What do you think of this? He asked in his deep, wooden voice. I think the humans are stalling, said his chief advisor, a smaller Kell named. They have no real answer to his accusations. This historian's story is just a delay. Perhaps, said, but something in Ambassador Park's smile had made him curious. In 10,000 years of life, had learned to pay attention when someone smiled like that. It usually meant trouble. Meanwhile, on the planet Earth, chaos erupted in the office of Superior. Dr. Lee was the head of Earth's historical archive, a massive building in Seoul that contained records of human history going back thousands of years. She was a short woman with glasses and hair that was always slightly messy. When she received urgent message, she nearly dropped her coffee. "They want what?" she shouted into her communication device. His voice came through clearly. "They want proof, Dr. Lee. Ambassador Park promised the council that we would show them why humans are not afraid of death. She specifically mentioned hold my beer incidents." Sat down heavily in her chair. "Hold my beer incidents. She wants us to show the entire Galactic Council our moments. She wants us to show them our bravest moments. Those are often the same thing." There was a pause. Then's voice came again, quieter this time. "Dr. Lee, they think we are cowards. They think we are too afraid to fight beside them. If we do not change their minds today, Earth will be pushed to the edges of the Alliance. We will have no voice, no power, no protection." Closed her eyes. She understood the stakes. Earth was new to the galactic community. They needed allies. They needed respect. And apparently, the best way to get that respect was to show alien civilizations just how insane humans could be. "Fine," she said. "I will gather the archives. Tell Ambassador Park that she will have her historian." "Actually," said carefully, "Ambassador Park specifically requested you." "Me?" "You are the expert, Dr. Lee. You have studied human behavior for 30 years. You know more about hold my beer incidents than anyone alive." Laughed despite herself. It was not a happy laugh. "I spent my entire career studying the moments when humans made the worst decisions of their lives. I never thought it would save the planet." "Will you come?" Looked around her office. The walls were covered with photographs and documents. Images of humans climbing impossible mountains. Reports of explorers walking into deadly jungles. Records of scientists testing dangerous theories on themselves. Her life's work surrounded her, documenting every time a human had looked at death and said, "Not today." "I will be there in 6 hours," she said. "Prepare the council and—" "Yes. Tell Ambassador Park that I hope she knows what she is doing." Back in the council hall, time passed slowly. Some species left to rest or eat. Others stayed, too curious to leave, remained in her seat as still as a statue. Ambassador grew impatient. He walked to the human section and stood before with all 4 arms crossed. "Your hour is almost finished," he said. "Where is this historian?" Opened her eyes slowly. "She is coming. Earth is far from here. Even with the fastest ships, travel takes time." You said he earlier." "I made a change. Dr. Lee is the best in her field. She will explain everything much better than any other historian could." Leaned closer, his gray face only inches from us. "I warn you, Ambassador, if this is some kind of delay tactic, the Council will not be pleased. Your species already has a poor reputation. Do not make it worse." Met his 4 eyes with her too. She did not blink. "Ambassador, when Dr. Lee is finished, the Council's understanding of humanity will be completely changed. I promise you that." "Changed how?" "You will see." Made a sound of frustration and walked away. Smiled slightly and closed her eyes again. Leaned toward her. "Dr. Lee is on her way," she seemed, reluctant. "She always is, hates public speaking." "Then why did you request her specifically?" Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke softly so only could hear. "Because Lee does not just study human history, she loves it. Every stupid, brave, ridiculous moment. When she talks about humanity, you can hear the pride in her voice. The Council does not need facts and numbers. They need to feel something." Nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. 6 hours later, the council hall was full again. Word had spread that something interesting was happening with the human delegation. Species who normally never attended meetings now filled the upper seats, eager to see what would happen. A small ship landed on the platform outside the hall. The doors opened and Dr. Lee stepped out. She was shorter than most humans and looked nervous. Her clothes were wrinkled from the long journey. Her glasses sat crooked on her nose. She carried a single bag filled with data tablets. "That is your expert," said loudly, not hiding his disbelief. "She looks like she has not slept in days." "I have not," said, her voice sharper than anyone expected. She walked up the platform steps and stopped at the center of the hall, facing the thousands of alien species who watched her. "I spent the entire journey selecting the best examples for this presentation. I hope it was worth missing my sleep." Smiled from her seat. Good, she thought, is angry. Angry gives the best speeches. Elder leaned forward. "Dr. Lee, Ambassador Park claims you can explain something called hold my beer incidents. We are curious. What does this phrase mean?" Adjusted her glasses and looked at the ancient tree creature. She was silent for several seconds. Then she spoke. "Elder, the phrase, hold my beer, is what humans say before they do something incredibly stupid and incredibly brave at the same time. Usually, they say it when they see something dangerous and decide to challenge it. Another human will literally hold their drink while they attempt the impossible." "That sounds foolish," said. "It is," agreed. "It is completely foolish. And yet it is also the reason humanity has survived everything the universe has thrown at us." She paused and looked around the hall. "You think we fear death. You are wrong. We are simply the only species crazy enough to look at death and say, 'I bet I can survive that. Hold my beer.'" She raised her data tablet and began her presentation. "Let me show you what I mean." The lights in the hall dimmed. A massive screen appeared in the air above. And for the first time in galactic history, alien species saw what humans really were. They saw madness. They saw courage. They saw both at the same time. And they could not look away. The first video began playing on the giant screen. It showed a human standing at the edge of a cliff, thousands of feet above a rocky valley. The human wore a strange suit with fabric stretched between their arms and legs. They looked down at the drop below them and grinned. "This is called wingsuit flying," said. "Humans jump from high places and use these suits to glide through the air at speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour." On screen, the human jumped. They fell toward the earth, then spread their arms and began to fly between the rocks. They passed so close to the cliff walls that they could have touched them. One wrong move would mean instant death. "Why?" asked a species that looked like floating jellyfish. "Why would anyone do this?" "Because it feels like freedom," said simply. "Because for a few minutes humans can fly like birds, and for some of us that feeling is worth the risk of death." The council watched in stunned silence as more wingsuit videos played. Humans flying through caves. Humans diving between buildings. Humans passing through holes in mountains that seemed too small for their bodies. "This cannot be real," said. "You must be showing us computer images." "I assure you, every video I show today is real," said. "Every human you see actually did these things. Many of them died, but more always came to try again." She switched to the next video. This one showed humans climbing a frozen waterfall using only sharp tools in their hands and spikes on their feet. Ice fell around them constantly. The temperature was far below freezing. One slip would send them falling to their deaths. "Ice climbing," explained. "Humans travel to the coldest places on Earth to climb frozen water. They do this for fun." Elder made a strange sound. Among the Kel, it was the equivalent of a gasp. For fun, they risk death for entertainment. "Not just entertainment," said. "Pride, achievement, the feeling of doing something no one thought possible." She paused. "Elder, how many of your species have died exploring dangerous places?" "Very few. We avoid unnecessary risk." "Humans are different. We seek risk. We chase it. And when we conquer it, we feel more alive than ever." The next video made several species in the audience cover their eyes. It showed a human swimming in dark water, surrounded by enormous sharks. The sharks had rows of teeth longer than human fingers. They circled the swimmer like predators waiting to strike. "Shark diving," said. Some humans pay money to be placed in the water with the most dangerous fish in our oceans. They do this without cages, without weapons, just their bodies and their courage. They are insane, whispered Bora, the young advisor. Heard him, she smiled. Perhaps, but watch this. On screen, a shark swam directly toward the human. The audience held their breath. But instead of attacking, the shark slowed down. The human reached out and touched its nose gently. The shark seemed almost confused, then swam away peacefully. Humans learned that sharks do not want to eat them, explained. Most shark attacks are accidents, so some humans decided to prove this by swimming with sharks, teaching others not to fear them. They risked their lives to change how people think about these animals. That is noble, Elder admitted, but also extremely foolish. Welcome to humanity, said with a small laugh. We are often both at the same time. She continued through dozens of videos. Humans racing cars at speeds that should be impossible. Humans skiing down mountains that had never been touched by anyone before. Humans diving deep into underwater caves where no light could reach, swimming through tunnels so narrow they could barely fit. Then she showed them the space videos. This, said, her voice becoming more serious, is what humans did before we met you, before we knew aliens existed, before we knew what was waiting in the stars. The screen showed ancient footage, grainy and old. A massive rocket sat on a launch pad, smoke pouring from its base. 3 small figures in white suits walked toward it. These men knew that the rocket might explode, said. They knew that space was an environment that would kill them in seconds without protection. They knew that no human had ever traveled so far from Earth, and they went anyway. The rocket launched. The council watched as it rose into the sky, a pillar of fire pushing it higher and higher. Some species had seen similar launches before, but never with this context, never knowing that the beings inside were aware they might die. They traveled to our moon, continued. They landed on it, they walked on its surface, and then they came home. She paused. When they returned, we asked them why they did it. Do you know what they said? Silence in the hall. They said they wanted to see what was there. That was enough reason for them. Stood from his seat, his 4 arms spread wide. I do not understand. You show us humans doing impossible things, dangerous things, deadly things. Are you trying to prove that humans do not fear death? Because all I see is evidence that humans are suicidal. Turned to face him directly. Ambassador, may I ask you a question? Yes. In the history of the people, has any individual ever done something dangerous just to see if they could? Not for survival, not for resources, just to see. Hesitated, he looked at his advisors. None of them could provide an answer. That is what I thought, said. They are a logical species. You do not take unnecessary risks. This is why you have survived for 10,000 years, but it is also why you will never understand humans. She raised her tablet again. Let me show you the final category of videos. These are the ones I was most hesitant to include, because they show humanity at its most foolish and its most pure. The screen changed to show a burning building. Fire poured from every window. Smoke filled the sky. In front of the building, humans in heavy protective gear ran toward the flames instead of away from them. Firefighters, said. Humans who choose to run into burning buildings to save strangers. They know they might die. Many of them do die, but they go anyway because someone inside might need help. More videos followed. Humans diving into flooded rivers to pull out drowning children. Humans climbing into collapsed buildings after earthquakes, searching for survivors. Humans standing between armed attackers and innocent people, using their own bodies as shields. This, said, is what humans are. We are afraid of death. Of course we are, but our fear does not control us. Instead, we control our fear. We use it. We look at the most terrible situations imaginable and we say, I can help. I can make a difference. Hold my beer. The screen showed one final video, a human soldier in a war zone, running across open ground while explosions erupted around them. They reached a wounded friend and lifted them onto their shoulders. Then they ran back, carrying their friend to safety, bullets striking the ground at their feet. This soldier did not know if they would survive, said. They ran anyway, because their friend needed them, because doing nothing was worse than dying. She turned off the screen and faced the council in darkness. That is humanity. We are not fearless. We are something more dangerous. What? Asked quietly. We are brave despite our fear. We know death is coming for all of us. And instead of hiding from it, we choose to live so fully that death has to chase us. We make death work for every single life it takes. The lights in the hall slowly returned. Stood alone on the platform, a small woman facing 1,000 alien species. But she did not seem small anymore. She seemed like something much larger. You asked if humans can fight beside you, said. Let me give you my answer. Humans have been fighting since the moment we existed. We fought the cold. We fought hunger. We fought disease and disaster and each other. And through all of it, we never stopped. We never gave up. Death has been chasing us for millions of years. She smiled, and there was fire in her eyes. It has not caught us yet. Silence filled the great hall. It was the kind of silence that happens when thousands of beings try to process something their minds cannot fully accept. The alien species sat frozen in their seats, their many eyes and sensors focused on the small human woman standing alone on the platform. Elder was the first to move. The ancient tree creature rose slowly from his seat, his wooden body creaking with emotion. He had lived for 10,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and die out, but he had never seen anything like what Lee had just shown him. Dr. Lee, he said, his deep voice echoing through the hall, I require clarification. Nodded, of course, Elder, what would you like to know? The humans in those videos, the ones who jumped from cliffs, who swam with predators, who ran into fire, paused, his branch-like fingers touching his wooden face. Were they special? Were they trained from birth for such tasks? Were they enhanced somehow? Some were trained, admitted. The firefighters, the soldiers, the emergency responders. But many others were ordinary people, regular humans with regular lives who simply decided to do something extraordinary. But why, pressed? What drives a creature to do these things? My species has survived for millions of years because we avoid unnecessary risk. We plan, we calculate, we never act without certainty of success. This is wisdom. This is logic. What you describe sounds like madness offered. Yes. Walked closer to where stood. Despite her small size, her presence seemed to grow with each step. Elder, you are correct that avoiding risk leads to survival, but humans discovered something different. We learned that taking risks, the right risks, leads to something more than survival. What could be more than survival? Living, spread her hands. There is a difference between being alive and truly living. Humans chase experiences that make our short lives meaningful. We seek moments that make our hearts race and our minds expand. We want to feel everything the universe has to offer, even if it kills us. Made a sound like wind through leaves. Among the Kel, it meant deep thought. This is difficult to understand. I know, and I do not expect you to fully understand it, but I hope you can accept it. Turn to address the entire council. Humans are different from other species. We do not live as long. We are not as strong. We cannot survive in extreme environments without help, but we have one advantage that no other species seems to possess. What is that? Called out a floating jellyfish species from the upper seats. We refuse to accept our limitations. Walked back to the center of the platform. When humans see something that should be impossible, we do not turn away. We ask, how can I make this possible? When we face an obstacle that seems too large, we do not give up. We ask, how can I overcome this? Death tells us that our time is limited, and instead of accepting that limit, we try to fill every moment with as much experience as we can. Ambassador stood from his seat. His gray face showed an expression that could not read. He walked down to the platform and stood before her, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. "Dr. Lee," he said slowly, "I owe you an apology." The hall rustled with surprise, was known for his pride. He rarely admitted mistakes. "When I spoke earlier about humans fearing death," continued, "I based my words on incomplete information. I saw humans building hospitals and writing warnings, and I assumed these were signs of weakness. I understand now that I was wrong." Waited, saying nothing. "Humans build hospitals not because you are afraid to die, but because you want to live longer to do more impossible things. You write warnings not because you are cowards, but because you save your courage for moments that matter." Bowed his head slightly. "I misjudged your species. Please forgive me." "There is nothing to forgive," said gently. "Many species have made the same mistake. Humans confuse everyone at first." "I have questions," said. "Many questions. The videos you showed, the acts of. I do not even know what to call them." "We call them hold my beer moments," said with a small smile. "Because often they begin with someone handing their drink to a friend before doing something insane." "Yes, that phrase. I still do not fully understand it. Could you explain further?" Thought for a moment. "Imagine you are with friends. Someone says that a certain thing cannot be done. Maybe it is too dangerous. Maybe it is too foolish. Maybe everyone agrees that attempting it would be stupid." She paused. "A human hears this and thinks, 'I bet I could do it.' So they hand their drink to the nearest friend and say, 'Hold my beer.' Then they try the impossible thing. And if they fail, then they usually get hurt. Sometimes they die," shrugged. "But often they succeed. And when they do, they prove that the impossible is actually possible. They expand what humanity believes it can achieve." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This is insanity." "Absolutely. But it is productive insanity." Pulled up another image on the floating screen. It showed a timeline of human achievements. Every major advancement in human history came from someone who ignored the warnings. The first humans who made fire were probably told it was too dangerous. The first humans who sailed across oceans were called fools. The first humans who built flying machines were laughed at by everyone around them. She scrolled through the timeline. Inventions, discoveries, explorations. Each one marked by someone who had looked at the impossible and said, "I will try anyway." "We call these people pioneers," said. "Heroes, legends. But at the time, most people called them crazy. The line between genius and madness is very thin in humanity. Sometimes the same person is both." Elder spoke again from his seat. "Dr. Lee, you have shown us humans performing individual acts of courage and foolishness. But what about larger situations? Wars, disasters? How do humans behave when entire populations face death?" His expression grew more serious. "That is an excellent question, Elder, and the answer might disturb you." She pulled up new images. These showed human history on a larger scale, wars that had killed millions, natural disasters that had destroyed entire cities, diseases that had swept across continents. "Humans have faced extinction multiple times," said. "Ice ages that nearly froze us out of existence, plagues that killed half our population, wars that threatened to destroy our entire species." She looked at the council with calm eyes. "We are still here." "How?" asked a species that resembled a cloud of sparkling dust. "Because humans do not give up, even when everything seems lost, even when death seems certain, even when logic says we should surrender." Clenched her fist. "We fight, we adapt, we find ways to survive that no one expected, and when we come out the other side, we are stronger than before." She showed them images of cities rebuilt after destruction, of people helping strangers after disasters, of communities coming together in the darkest times. "This is what makes humans dangerous," said. Not our weapons, not our technology, not our physical strength, our refusal to accept defeat. You can wound us and we will heal. You can break us and we will rebuild. You can push us to the edge of extinction and we will climb back up and keep fighting. Ambassador spoke quietly. And if the enemy is too strong, if victory truly is impossible, smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen the darkest parts of human history and still believed in her species. Then we make them pay for every inch of ground they take. We make the cost of defeating us so high that other enemies think twice before attacking. And even in death, we inspire the next generation to keep fighting. She met eyes directly. Humans do not know how to give up. We do not have that option in our thinking. Even when our minds say this is hopeless, something in our heart says try anyway. It is illogical, it is irrational, and it has kept us alive for millions of years. The hall was silent again, but this time the silence felt different. It was not confusion anymore. It was something closer to respect. I have one more thing to show you, said. One more example of what humans are capable of. She pulled up an image of a small group of humans standing together. They were wearing simple clothes. Their faces were tired but determined. Behind them, a destroyed city burned in the background. These people lost everything, said. Their homes, their families. Their entire world was destroyed by a natural disaster. They had every reason to give up, every reason to lie down and wait for death. She paused. Do you know what they did instead? No one answered. They started rebuilding. Right there in the middle of the destruction, they began clearing rubble and planning new buildings. When asked why, they said, because this is our home and we will not let it die. Turned off the screen. That is humanity. We are not afraid of death. We simply refuse to let it have the last word. Elder rose to his full height, towering over everyone in the hall. Dr. Lee, I have lived for 10,000 years. I have seen many things, but I have never encountered a species like yours. He placed one wooden hand over his chest, a gesture of deep respect among the Kel. I formally withdraw my earlier doubts about humanity. You have proven yourselves worthy of standing beside any species in this galaxy. Around the hall, other species began making similar gestures. Sounds of agreement filled the air. The mood had completely shifted from the beginning of the day. Ambassador stepped forward and extended one of his 4 hands too. Dr. Lee, on behalf of I welcome humanity as true allies. We underestimated you. We will not make that mistake again. Shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Ambassador. I hope this is the beginning of a long partnership. As Do I paused, then asked with genuine curiosity, those hold my beer moments you described, do all humans experience them? Laughed softly. Oh, Ambassador, you have no idea. Every human alive has probably had at least one moment of looking at something dangerous and thinking, I wonder if I could do that. She glanced toward who was smiling proudly from her seat. Some of us are just better at hiding it than others. The council session continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Humanity was no longer seen as a weak species afraid of death. They were now seen as something far more interesting, something far more dangerous, something the galaxy had never encountered before. 3 days passed after Lee's presentation. The Galactic Council did not rest during that time. Species who had never spoken to each other gathered in small groups to discuss what they had witnessed. Questions about humanity spread through every corner of the Great Hall. Ambassadors who had ignored the human delegation for years suddenly wanted meetings. Scientists requested access to Earth's historical archives. Military commanders asked about human tactics and strategies. In her temporary quarters on the station, Park finally allowed herself to relax. She sat by a large window that looked out at the stars, a cup of tea warming her hands. Behind her was still working on his tablet, answering the endless requests that flooded in every hour. You can stop working, said gently. We won. I know, but his fingers kept moving. I just want to make sure we follow up properly. This is the most important moment in Earth's history. We cannot waste it. Smiled and turned back to the stars. You sound like me when I was your age, always worried about the next step, always planning for the future. Is that bad? No, it is exactly what we need. She took a sip of tea. But sometimes you should also stop and appreciate what you have achieved. Today, humanity proved itself to the galaxy. That deserves at least a few minutes of celebration. The door to their quarters opened and Lee walked in. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes and her hair was even messier than usual. But there was a satisfied expression on her face. Dr. Lee said, standing quickly, "How did the follow-up meetings go?" "Endless," groaned, collapsing into a chair. "Every species wants to know more. The Kell invited me to visit there. They want to collaborate on historical research. Even those floating jellyfish creatures asked if humans would share our extreme sports records with them." The Myra said, "They are actually quite peaceful. Their bodies cannot experience physical danger, so they find our risk-taking fascinating." "Everyone finds it fascinating," said. "That is the problem. I have answered the same questions 100 times. Yes, humans really do jump from cliffs for fun. No, we do not have a death wish. Yes, we know it is dangerous. No, we do not care." She rubbed her temples. "Being a historian was easier when I just had to read old documents." Laugh softly. "Welcome to diplomacy, Dr. Lee. You are a hero now. Heroes do not get to rest." "I did not ask to be a hero. I just showed them some videos." "You changed how the entire galaxy sees humanity. That is more than most people achieve in a lifetime." Was quiet for a moment, then she looked at with curious eyes. "Ambassador Park, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know it would work? When you asked for that 1 hour when you called me here, how did you know the council would react the way they did?" Set down her tea and turned to face fully. "I did not know, not for certain, but I had a theory." "What theory?" "Every species in this galaxy has one thing in common: they survived. They made it through the dangers of evolution. They built civilizations. They reached the stars. And to do all of that, they had to be careful. They had to avoid unnecessary risks. They had to calculate and plan and prepare." "That sounds reasonable," said from his corner. "It is reasonable. It is logical. It is how intelligent species survive long enough to join the galactic community." Paused. "But it also means they have forgotten something. They have forgotten what it feels like to take a risk just because you want to. They have forgotten the excitement of doing something dangerous just to prove you can." "And you thought showing them our history would remind them?" asked. "I thought it would make them curious. Curious about a species that does things differently. Curious about beings who look at death not as an enemy to avoid but as a challenge to overcome." Smiled. "And curious beings ask questions. They seek understanding. They stop dismissing and start listening." The door chimed, indicating a visitor. Checked the security screen and his eyes widened. "Ambassador Park, it is Ambassador. He is requesting a private meeting." Stood smoothly and straightened her clothing. "Let him in." The door opened and entered. He looked different from 3 days ago. His gray skin seemed lighter, and his 4 eyes moved with something that looked like nervousness. He was alone, without his usual group of advisors. "Ambassador Park," he said, bowing his head slightly, "thank you for seeing me." "Ambassador, please sit down." Folded his long body into one of the chairs designed for multiple species. His 4 arms settled in his lap. "I came to deliver news personally. The council has voted." Felt her heart beat faster, but her face remained calm. "And humanity has been accepted as a full military ally. You will have a seat at all strategic meetings. Your ships will patrol beside ours. Your soldiers will fight beside our soldiers." Paused. "It was unanimous. Every species voted yes." Made a sound of excitement but quickly controlled himself. Simply stared in disbelief. Nodded slowly. "I am grateful, Ambassador, truly." There is more, shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. I have been asked to serve as the primary liaison between the Council and Earth. It seems my earlier mistake has made me the most qualified to understand humans. Because I was so wrong about you, the Council believes I will work harder to understand you correctly. That is logical, said. Is it? Made a strange sound that might have been a laugh. I thought I knew everything about survival and strategy. I thought my 10,000 years of experience made me wise. And then a small human woman showed me videos of people jumping off cliffs, and I realized I knew nothing. You knew many things, said gently. You just did not know us. That is understandable. We are unusual. That is one word for it. Leaned forward, his 4 eyes focusing intently on. Ambassador Park, I must ask you something. It has been bothering me since Dr. Lee's presentation. Please ask. The phrase, hold my beer, describes individual acts of courage and foolishness, but humans number in the billions. Do these incidents happen often? Are they common? Exchanged a look with. The historian covered her mouth to hide a smile. Ambassador, said carefully, what Dr. Lee showed you was a small sample, a very small sample, chosen specifically to be understandable to non-human minds. What do you mean? I mean that hold my beer incidents happen constantly on Earth. Every day, humans do things that would horrify other species. We climb buildings without safety equipment. We swim in freezing water for fun. We create new ways to risk our lives faster than we can document them. 4 eyes blinked rapidly, every day. Some humans have multiple incidents in a single day. Leaned back in her chair. We did not show you everything because we were worried it would be too much. We wanted you to understand us, not fear us. Too much, repeated faintly. Finally spoke up. Ambassador, there is a region of Earth called Florida. The humans who live there are famous for doing things that other humans consider insane. We keep records called Florida Man Stories. If you want, I can show you some examples. Looked uncertain. Is it worse than what you showed the Council? Much worse, and much funnier, and much more confusing, grinned. One man fought a bear to save his dog. Another tried to ride a wild animal through a store. A third broke into a house just to pet someone's cat. Those sound like very different situations. They are. That is what makes Florida Man Stories special. You never know what will happen next. Sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood slowly, all 4 arms hanging at his sides. I need time to process this information. Humans are more complex than I imagined. We have that effect on people, said. Walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. Ambassador Park, one final question. In your opinion, what is the most dangerous thing about humanity? Not your weapons or your technology. What is the core thing that other species should be aware of? Thought about the question seriously. It was a good question, an important question. She wanted to give an honest answer. Hope, she finally said. Hope. Humans never stop hopping, even when everything is lost, even when logic says there is no chance, even when death is certain. Met his 4 eyes with her too. A human will fight with their last breath because they hope they might win. They will try the impossible because they hope they might succeed. They will stand against impossible odds because they hope they might survive. And sometimes, Ambassador, that hope is enough to change everything. Nodded slowly. Hope, I will remember that. He left the quarters, and the door closed behind him. For a moment the 3 humans sat in silence, then spoke quietly. Did we just become important? Laughed. We became allies. Important will come later when they realize what they have agreed to. What do you mean? Answered before could. She means that the galaxy just agreed to stand beside a species that looks at death and says, not today. They just allied themselves with billions of beings who do impossible things for fun. She shook her head in amazement. They have no idea what they are getting into. walked back to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, enemies lurked. Dangers waited. Challenges that the galaxy had never faced were coming. And now, humanity would be part of the answer. She smiled softly. The galaxy thought we were afraid of death. They thought we would hide behind our warnings and our medicines. They thought we were weak. "What will they think now?" asked. Turned to face her team, her allies, her fellow humans who had just changed the course of history. "Now they will learn the truth. Humans do not fear death." Her smile widened. "We race against it. We challenge it. We look at the darkest parts of the universe and say, 'Hold my beer, I have an idea.'" Outside the window, the stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy stretched endless in every direction, full of wonders and terrors that humanity had not yet discovered. But now they would, together with their new allies, together with species who had finally learned what humans were capable of. Death was still out there, waiting for everyone. But humanity had never been good at waiting. They had always been better at running toward the unknown, arms open, hearts pounding, ready for whatever came next. "Hold my beer. Here we come."